With the vibrant atmosphere of Coney Mall, there's no better place to enjoy a couple of cheese conies from Skyline Chili than Kings Island. It's hard to believe that Kings Island and Skyline Chili have been together for 40 years. Hello, everyone. Alongside the truculent Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. Thank you, Aaron Board, 330T, Logan Lipper, Brian Hauser, Lil Mac 21, Miss Mandy, 1983, Jacob Fix, Stephen Hornack, Eric Grau, Ian Crawford, Damon Barnes, and Dustin Jackson. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and hey, some levels even get some free stuff. Don, it's Skyline time.
Skyline time, 1985 is when it debuted at Kings Island. But really, Ryan, think about it. What's a day at Kings Island without a cheese coney or a three-way from Skyline Chili?
I can't tell you how many people from peripheral cities like Indianapolis and Detroit and stuff, they go to Kings Island and their day is not complete because they get two meals. They get their La Rosas and they get their Skyline Chili.
Yeah, I mean, it's number one for me, it's hard to believe that it has been 40 years. But, it really, when you think about the different IPs and that Kings Island has had, sometimes people aren't happy about these outside places coming into the park. But this is one that seems to really fit. Number one, it fits that Coney Mall theme of the park. But it's a Cincinnati tradition. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of people that this becomes tradition, just like that blue ice cream, that we've got to get those cheese conies or they got to get that three-way while they're at the park.
Yeah, it's funny. It's Skyline and Gold Star, but Skyline in this case are so polarizing because it seems like people from out of town either absolutely love it or like that's not chili. But everybody within the 275 loop or even a little bit outside of that love this stuff.
Now, I didn't have a lot of exposure to Skyline Chili before Kings Island in 1985. Now, I had it because when I was growing up in Anderson Township, there was a Skyline on Beachmont Avenue, but my family had, when we were going to get that, it was most of the time it was going to be Gold Star, with the cheese conies. But 1985 goes into Kings Island. I'm going to admit I was not happy about it going in there because the location in Coney Mall, it replaced the lunch basket. And the lunch basket was my go-to, when I first started, riding the racer all the time in 1981. So 81 through 84, I had oftentimes, lunch there, dinner there, sometimes a snack there. But there was not a visit that I didn't get something from the lunch basket. So I wasn't real happy when that first happened. But because it was at Kings Island, it gave me more exposure because I was there all the time, more exposure to Skyline. And I came to absolutely love it. No longer, we'll get Gold Star. It's always Skyline now for me. And that's a lot in part, due to Kings Island.
I have to admit, I'm a very loyal Skyline person. I'll do Gold Star for the burgers occasionally.
Good burgers there. Yeah, good burgers.
If Skyline doesn't have the burgers. If Skyline did the burgers, I'd be all Skyline. But anyway, so Skyline wasn't new. It wasn't invented in 1985 when it came to Kings Island. It was founded in 1949 by Nicholas, let's try this, Lambrinidis, inspired by his Greek heritage. Thank you. And the Cincinnati skyline, obviously. But it's got local fame with its 3-ways, 4-ways, and 5-ways too, that bring that unique chili flavor. Here's a picture
those
of
cheese conies cannot be beat.
Are you a coney guy or a 3-way guy?
It's a really tough call for me, but more of the 3-way. If I'm going to be, say I'm at a Reds game, it's always it's going to be the cheese conies.
Yeah, but, because you can't like walk and eat the
no. But if I'm going to the restaurant or I'm going through the drive-through, I can't decide, so I get 2 cheese conies and a 3-way. But at Kings Island, for the most part, at Kings Island, I will get the 3-way.
So there used to be a life hack
What do you
that I
get?
used to, that well I think well okay. I went to Skyline because they're doing this thing called the Skyway, I think it's over now, but it was like double the cheese for no extra price, which I'm a big cheese lover. Uh, and when I went through, I got a regular 3-way with the Skyway cheese, and then I got a Tolito, I think they call it, which is like their burrito. Now, full disclosure, they don't have that at Kings Island. They just got the 3-ways and the conies and fries. But this actually had the chili, the cheese, and the spaghetti in it. And I had heard about this. I heard it was a menu hack and stuff. It was so good. But at Kings Island, so on the meal plan, you've got two options. You can either get 2 cheese conies and fries, or you can get a 3-way / 4-way with them just adding onions to make it a 4-way. So that was the case a couple years ago. What I used to do is get the 2 cheese conies and fries and get all the toppings from the 2 cheese conies on the side. So I get 2 hot dogs and chili cheese fries. Now, new for 2023, I think it was 2 years ago, they added chili cheese fries to the menu. And their chili cheese fries at Kings Island, because they don't use the same fries as the Skyline Chili, like outside of the park. They have got the normal fries, not the crinkle fries. Now, although crinkle fries are usually my favorite, in this instance, whoever supplies Kings Island fries pairs like a fine wine with Skyline Chili. Oh God, it's so good.
I'm one of the people that I think, whether it's a 3-way, the cheese conies, or you're talking about the cheese fries, when you get that at Kings Island, it's almost like the La Rosa's pizza, where it just, I don't know, because of atmosphere, maybe it just tastes better. But I know it's the same stuff. It just feels and tastes better.
See, I'm split on it. I think that the 3-ways outside of the park tastes better than inside the park, but I really do think that the conies that you get at Kings Island taste way better than they do in the restaurant. Part of that might be that you get a coney, you take it to a table and you eat it immediately. When I'm at the restaurant, I usually go through the drive-through, so like the cheese is kind of melted and stuff. But with the 3-way, if I had to choose, a lot of people nowadays are saying that they can't taste the difference between outside of the park and inside of the park with 3-ways. I still kind of feel like you can. But
I think maybe atmosphere plays into that a little bit, why I think that. I had the opportunity to work at the Skyline location at Kings Island. There were different times of the year where, because kids were still in school, that the full-time staff would have to go out and work different places. So there was one day that worked for about 3 or 4 hours at Skyline. I can tell you that the guests that got Skyline Chili that day got more cheese on their conies and 3-way than they normally would get. But it was a fun experience, to say that I worked the Skyline Chili location. There's just something about it. I mean, and you go back to, we're talking again 40 years this year, Skyline Chili and Kings Island together. In 1985, Skyline, they're already this regional staple. Kings Island was really emerging. They were just a dozen years into their history, so they were emerging as one of those premier, finest amusement parks in the country. So the timing was really perfect for them to join forces together, I thought.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. So I was alive in 85, but very, very young. Did the park make a big deal about it when
No,
Skyline came?
not really. It was more of a foot. The new attraction that year was Whitewater Canyon, and at that time, the water rides all opened with the park in April. So leading up to the start of the season, everything was about Whitewater Canyon. They talked about the new entertainment lineup, those kind of things. And it was just really a footnote in any of the news media stories or in the press release, that they sent out talking about, everything that was going to be going on in 1985. At that point in time, they included, Winterfest was going to be there. And, in addition to Whitewater Canyon, any other types of, upgrades around the park. And it was just kind of a footnote, like, and also, in the food and beverage area, Skyline Chili will replace the lunch basket in Coney Mall. So that was really about it. So there wasn't a big fuss about it. I remember just being odd, in April for me to look in Coney Mall and it's not the lunch basket anymore. It was Skyline. But, I quickly adapted and it became one of my go-to places.
Yeah. Now, to their credit, this isn't out of the ordinary. I don't think there was a big deal when Chick-fil-A came in, or
No,
what's
no.
the other one? Tom and She. That there was no big deal about that. I guess when you bring in an outside vendor and stuff, it's just kind of like another offering rather than an attraction.
I
Although
Yeah, I think at
this,
that time, maybe it, wouldn't have seemed like a big deal. But nowadays, I think if Skyline Chili had not been at Kings Island until this year, then I think it would be a big deal just because of the longevity now that Skyline has in Cincinnati, the longevity that Kings Island has, those two joining forces. I think it makes a lot more sense. I think there's some good story opportunities there for the 40th anniversary of it.
yeah. So the park hasn't put anything on the website or anything like that about it being the 40th anniversary. Do you think they know?
I would think they probably don't know that it's the 40th anniversary. There's a lot of, history and little things that would slip through the cracks unless you were a big Kings Island fanatic and you knew all the different, years, what happened, what years. And, you were tuned to that kind of thing and thinking about those kind of things. Like for me, when somebody says 1985 Kings Island, right away, I know Whitewater Canyon debuted. Skyline Chili was new that year. I remember what shows were playing that year. So for me, it's automatic to be thinking about those kind of things. But if I came from not a background of growing up at Kings Island, being around it all the time, I wouldn't be thinking about it being the 40th anniversary for it now.
All right, Kings Island. So you heard it here on Tower Topics. Now you have to at least put something on the website. This would be great for opening day celebration.
I think it would. I think it would. There's a lot of local pride there, both with Kings Island, Skyline Chili. You got the location there in Mason. It ties perfectly into the regional identity of Kings Island, that part of Ohio. You got the nostalgia, that factor in there, 40 years. I mean, that's a big milestone. There's a lot of families. We've talked about it earlier. There's a lot of families that have made Skyline a tradition when they visit Kings Island, just like Blue Ice Cream or La Rosa's Pizza. So I think it's a big part of the Kings Island visit for a lot of guests is that. So I think there's a lot of things that Kings Island and Skyline could partner on, to bring awareness and celebrate the 40th anniversary, with it. I think some of the things that you could do. Remember a few years back, 2008, 2009, they had the Skyline Chili eating contest, and you had all the
for
major
those of you who
leaders.
didn't get to see that mess,
That was a mess. Yeah, Humble Bob Shoud, he won back-to-back years, beat Joey Chestnut in that. But that was a huge draw. It filled the Showplace Theater with people watching this. I use the word spectacle, but there was a lot of. It made some great photo opportunities for me.
It was a lot of fun to watch. I will tell you that.
There was this one woman, she couldn't have been more than like 95 to 100 pounds. Thomas was her last name. And she put away, she almost won this. She finished third. She put over, way over 10 pounds of Skyline in 10 minutes. Now this guy, Humble Bob Shoud, after he downed over 12, 13 pounds of Skyline Chili, won the championship, posed for all the photographs, holding the big check. He just went over and in 2009 rode Diamondback. The year before, we took him over and he rode the Beast, so it didn't bother him at all to do that. But I think something like that, you can have an eating contest. You don't even have to do it, a big thing like an organized thing. You could do something like with coaster stock there in May, celebrate the 40th anniversary. And I know a lot of coaster enthusiasts are big Skyline Chili fans. You could do something like an eating contest for the coaster stock members, and just have it for them, and just have everybody enter if they're interested in participating. And then you just draw out like 8 to 10 names, and you do kind of the same thing. I think that'd be kind of fun for the participants if you did that. They could have, special cheese coney recognizing the 40th anniversary, that's only available for a limited time. That helps, maybe drive some extra visits for people that you want to get some, maybe it's a foot long Skyline, cheese coney or something, but just something different. But there's a lot of things that could be done to help celebrate it. I certainly hope it doesn't go unnoticed by the park and the park guest. Outside of Tower Topics, will it be heard or talked about anywhere else? I don't know. I certainly hope it does, because I think that partnership warrants, some kind of a celebration, some kind of recognition.
Well, now it will. Yeah, that's very cool. So leave us a comment down below, first of all, do you love or hate Skyline? And if you love Skyline, what's your go-to order? I want to say to-go order, but that's not what I'm asking. Your go-to order. What do you normally order with the Skyline? Are you a three-way? Are you a cheese coney person? Do you eat it outside of the park? Or is it exclusively a Kings Island thing for you? Or do you detest it because you're an out-of-town weirdo who doesn't like good food? It's on the dining plan too. We mentioned that.
It's on the dining plan. That was a big draw for me last year in getting the dining plan, is I wanted to, be able to enjoy Skyline Chili, just relax in Coney Mall. And more of like an evening type thing for me is just, 7:30, 8 o'clock, just get some cheese conies, get a three-way, and just kind of, sit down and just relax and enjoy the rest of the night.
Absolutely. Right. Let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell.
All right. Ryan, are you buying or selling this? By 2028, Kings Island will break tradition and move on from La Rosa's Pizza and do their own thing with pizza.
Sell. 100% sell. People come to Kings Island to eat La Rosa's. La Rosa's is the pizza of Kings Island. Now, by 2028, could there possibly be a restaurant that sells other pizza besides La Rosa's that's like got the breaded crust? And we talked about this. Absolutely. I think that's entirely possible. But will La Rosa's be gone by 2028? I am selling that. What about you?
I'm going to sell that for the same reasons you pointed out, that it's, it's tradition, it's nostalgia, it's what people come to Kings Island for. Now, we do know that doesn't necessarily mean anything in the new Six Flags world, because there's a lot of things with history and tradition that are, being chopped. But I don't see that happening. I think it's, it's one of the most popular menu items there is La Rosa's. So I'm going to sell. Now, in saying that, I do think if Kings Island ever did their own pizza, they have the talent in place to do it very well.
I think so too. For me, it's like I would prefer them to make their own, assuming it would be something gourmet and not just something from like, Gordon Food Services or whatever, which I think it would be. But just so many people, like they're La Rosa's is synonymous with Kings Island. To break that bond would be insane, and I think they would really hear about it. That would be like if they switched to Pepsi. Like I don't think that would go well either, because people do care. And Kings Island is a Six Flags park, but it really belongs to the people of Cincinnati, and it's always been with Coke. And if they switch something like that, I don't think that people would be particularly happy about it. And the same thing with getting rid of La Rosa's or even Skyline.
No. My hope would be if they ever moved away from Coke, they would bring in RC Cola.
Yeah, so I could have an excuse just to drink water.
I love RC Cola. I'm okay with that.
Our friend of the show, Ronnie, used to joke that RC's tagline should be "the taste that's coming back," but it's always been that way, so it's never coming back. It's just always claiming that.
Well, that's what I grew up with. When I was in my childhood days, we had RC Cola, but no, I'm a big Coke fan though. Love.
I don't like Pepsi like at all. I greatly prefer Coke.
The only Pepsi product I like is Mountain Dew. I like Mountain Dew or Mountain Dew Zero, Diet Mountain Dew, any of those three. But just regular Pepsi and the other products in the Pepsi line, not a fan.
Insulting. They're an insult to my taste buds. Okay. All right. Let's bring on some Six Flags headline news. All right, so the early bird may get the worm, but in this case, the first mouse gets the cheese. Wild Mouse has officially been the first ride to test leading up to the 2025 season at Cedar Point, signaling the start of the season for America's roller coaster is just around the corner.
It is.
Don, when you were at Kings Island, what was the first roller coaster to test there that you remember? Like traditionally.
You mean traditionally?
Yeah.
I mean, it varied, year to year. Sometimes, a lot of times, the Great Pumpkin Coaster.
Really?
Was among the first to, to start rolling. Usually it got to be the, mid to late March before you would see the Beast moving the racer into March, beginning of April. Sometimes Diamondback, was one of the earlier ones. But for me, this is the time of year that I love seeing the different social media posts of all the Six Flags parks and other parks out there in the industry is when they start to show the park coming back to life and they start showing these rides testing. I got excited when I saw Cedar Point, was testing, which it might be, this ride. It's not one of the bigger ones, but it's still showing me that Cedar Point, it's just around the corner for the start of their 2025 season. It's the same way with other parks when you start to see that happening. So, it won't be long before we see Kings Island showing, some of the rides that are testing there. So it's just a sign that, opening day is just around the corner, and it gets you excited when you see that kind of content out there.
Yeah, I mean, with Kings Island, and correct me if I'm wrong, so we're at the very beginning of March as of this recording. So we're about 2 weeks away from seeing serious ride cycling at Kings Island. About halfway through March, you think?
I would think, maybe it's already happened and we just don't know yet. Maybe there's a couple of the rides like the Great Pumpkin Coaster that have cycled, or maybe something else from Camp Snoopy, has cycled. Snoopy Soapbox Racers, who knows? We just, maybe we haven't seen it yet. And, I'm hoping to see some action soon there because, again, like I said, that always gets everybody excited. And then you start counting down the days until the park is going to open.
Yeah, well, and to clarify, it's kind of a loaded question because you and I are answering in the context of like roller coasters, but I know I've driven past the park in like January and I've seen like Windseeker parked at the top. So
yeah, I mean, it stays up there for a lot of like several weeks during the winter. It just stays parked up there. That's just kind of standard operating procedure.
Right. So I imagine it's quite possible for maybe a flat ride, like the first flat ride they put together, they might run a cycle in February or something.
They could, yeah.
Yeah. But so the chances are they've run something by now. But when we talk about like when are you going to watch the webcam,
probably has cycled by now.
Certainly. But when we talk about can I watch the webcams and watch them cycle Diamondback, we're about 2 weeks away from that as of this recording.
If they keep the webcams up for everyone to see.
If they keep the webcams up for everyone to see. They already cut the International Street one for no reason at all, I believe. All right. We'll be right back with the listener questions.
Right. First question here comes from Kevin from Ohio. Which past Kings Island event goes down as the worst in the park's history? Rock Band Live in 2010 or the Joyce Becker Soap Opera Festival in 2008?
I just brought up the Joyce Becker
you
thing.
Did.
I had no idea. Maybe I saw because
maybe you and Kevin are good friends.
I don't know
and
who
you
Kevin
told him
is.
to send it in. I don't know.
What do you think? What's your answer? I want to hear yours first.
The worst
of the two,
I would go with Rock Band Live just because it, I think that one pretty much did not meet any kind of expectations that the guests had for it. Joyce Becker Soap Opera Festival, well, it didn't get a lot of people, to come watch it. Those that did still enjoyed it and had good questions in that for those on stage. So I'm going to go with Rock Band Live just because I don't think that the way that was, being talked about, and it was not just at Kings Island, it was other parks were getting it too, that just didn't really live up to, the picture that was being painted for what that was going to be.
I'm going to go with Rock Band Live because it sparked a fight between the CEO and the COO that caused the COO to walk out and quit the company. That's pretty bad. My understanding is the COO, maybe his son or nephew, was the producer of the show, and it didn't meet expectations. Now, to be clear, I watched it once, and I remember it being pretty bad, actually, come to think of it. It
wasn't a good show, but for what things I was doing, like with PR at the time, it was an opportunity for me to get different media personalities to come out and take part in the show.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, using it as a way to keep Kings Island top of mind with the awareness, because sometimes it's not the story. It's just the fact that the word Kings Island is out there is what matters. And for that purpose, I mean, it was good. But I just think, there was a lot of hype around it, before it was there. And
they had a tractor trailer parked out on Columbia with their logo on it and stuff.
Like and there was even some, a couple of the people from Cedar Point even went to New York, to get some, the details and everything about it and to kind of capture some video of the show being put together and that for all the parks to use. So, I mean, there was a lot of excitement about it. It just, I think, it wasn't something that the park's guests came back to watch a second time, a third time, like you see with so many other different shows or different events. They'll come back and experience it again. It was kind of a one and done thing for a lot of the guests. So that's why I'll say that goes down as the worst.
We need to do a show on that, so let's not talk about it too much. But I remember it got rained out a lot. That was the biggest problem because it was
It
there
did rain a
for,
lot.
was it like 2 weekends or so? It was really early in the shoulder season. But I think it got rained out for most of its shows, and then when I saw it, it was like, this is not great. But I did see video from like maybe Carowinds or something, and it seemed like they had an indoor theater, and it looked a lot better indoors. So
Yeah, I
what
think that would have worked better indoors. It definitely would have had it been in the Kings Island Theater instead.
So what we're going to have to do is let's do an episode on it at some point, but let's pull up footage. I'm sure that it's out there and kind of like break it down and so on.
Yeah,
But
and leave in the comments if you saw Rock Band live. Did you like it? You didn't like it? What your thoughts were on it.
I was so sure that if Rock Band Live was a hit, that for Halloween Haunt, they were going to have Rock Band Dead. I was so sure, because that would have been perfect. All right, next question. Tom from Cincinnati, Ohio. He said, I've seen Don post on X about how excited he is to use his season pass at Kentucky Kingdom, Dollywood, Holiday World, and Kennywood, but nothing about Kings Island. Why no love for Kings Island?
Because I don't have a Kings Island season pass at the moment. I think that would be why I haven't posted that I'm looking forward to using my season pass. As simple as that.
Fair enough. All right.
Next question comes from Colin from Forest Park, a proud graduate of The Ohio State University.
Go Buckeyes.
Yes. He says, I really enjoyed the episode on all the infrastructure updates, but I'm curious, why hasn't the park shared anything about these improvements on their website or social media or invited media out to cover the story? And I think that's a good point by Colin. I mean, it got us excited enough to do an episode on it.
Yeah, and part of it is the fact that they don't do that. I mean, let's just get that out of the way. They don't do that. But also, we don't know where these projects are. So one of the things that comes to mind is renovating the shop that the Kings Island Traders or whatever on the right side when you come in. Like maybe they've even touched it yet. They're building a new pump house. Is that really that interesting? I mean, I guess if you're adding the water slide, it is. But I agree. I think that especially in a year where maybe what they're adding is controversial, like stuff in the water park, where there is a percentage of people that are like, I don't do the water park, so I don't care. Maybe releasing it as kind of like a package thing of like, here are all the improvements you're going to see at Kings Island in 2025. That would probably be the route that I would go if I was the person that they ask these questions to. Obviously, I am not the person they ask these questions to.
No, I think for me, I think it'd be kind of not everything you want to put out there. Not everything's going to be interesting, but like in Soak City, where the old Subway building is now going to be Blue Ice Cream, something like that, just to create that awareness that Blue Ice Cream is there. We've mentioned it before that they revamped and refurbished that bar area in Soak City. Nothing at all was even said about that. It wasn't until I even went out to Soak City, that I saw they had done that. So little things like that, I think sometimes, to create some awareness, if it's going to be something the guest is going to use or have interest in, the bar, they're definitely going to want Blue Ice Cream out in Soak City. So I think those are the kind of things when there's construction going on with that, you can tell that story. I think last year, with the, what's it called? Splash River, the lazy river attraction there out in Soak City, they redid like the flooring and everything on that. I think that was something that I know the maintenance team was really proud of that work, but nobody knew that they had done that. I think that would have been something that would have been appreciated, by internal stakeholders had they acknowledged that on a social post to let guests know. So there's little things like that too that you got to think about is, who does this matter to sometimes? And, there's a lot of work that goes in, into some of these things, and it can make a difference for some of the different departments with what they're doing. So if something like that is out there, then I'm all for that. It should be shared and talked about, and not just something that gets discovered by guests, during their first visit.
Do you think that the redoing of the foundation of the lazy river, the action river or whatever? Because remember that was done when you were there too. Because the
That
lazy
had
is
been done when I was there, yes, but I know that it was done. Well, yeah, it was done it was done. Yeah, we talked about it.
Because that's when it went from a lazy river to an action river. That was the term,
Right.
the phraseology they used, and I think it was when you put in the drop capsule slide. Anyway, um, tell me about this timing. I think that if they redid something like that, where it's just like an interest story, the perfect timing for that would be that weekend after Kings Island's already open, because you don't have opening day anymore. You only get one of those.
Yeah.
It's starting to get warm. People are starting to get excited about that sort of stuff. And then you've got a newspaper placement or a media placement talking about, oh yeah, Soak City opens in about 2 weeks. We should buy our gold pass, or we should buy our silver passes or whatever.
Yeah. If it's an enhancement that makes it better for the guest experience, I think that's when you want to talk about it. That it's going to make a difference. The guest is going to notice a difference on something. Then you definitely want to talk about it.
Well, not just that. It's like, they paint the pools every year. That's Ohio state law. Nobody would notice that. Nobody knows that who hasn't worked at a water park around pools.
Right.
It's a safety thing. But nobody cares. But I still feel like there's a story. There's a there. Like, oh, they're preparing to open the water park. There's a story there.
I think sometimes showing activity is always something that the news media liked, is when they could see activity. There's a nice visual there.
Well, everybody there with the rollers or the sprayer,
4 or 5 people with the rollers out. I think that's a good photo. I think right now, you haven't seen anything in the news media for the new attractions going into Soak City. The construction of them. You've seen it on their blog, and they share it on social media, but you haven't seen anything being done in the traditional media outlets. You haven't seen the bloggers, the influencers coming out to get their construction tour. Once it's almost built, you kind of miss that opportunity. So now is when you want to be building that interest in that. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to see more of, is that there's more awareness about the different projects and things that they have going on, the things that are going to make a difference for the guests. Now, if it's just something that we put a new tile in a gift shop or a restaurant or the restroom or something, I don't think you need to talk about that. But again, blue ice cream being in Soak City, that's going to be of interest.
Well, what if it was a year without capex? They're putting in new without hardware capex. They're putting in new tile. I still think that there's a story there of, you put that on April 1st or so, saying, they're refurbishing the floor of the sweet spot as part of their park improvements. Kings Island opens in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you can always use that to get that opening day date out there. Anytime you can tie something in that says, when the park is going to open, or that the park is now open daily, or daily operation ends on this date. Anytime you can tie something in that's going to create that mention, out in the news media, or if somebody, is a blogger, influencer, whatever, can add that to their story, I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that timing is very important with that. I think if they tried to push a tile story in January, you're right, there'd be no interest. But if it's starting to get warm, if we're getting to the end of March or so, and they're like, oh, Kings Island's preparing to open, I don't care what the subject is. It could be somebody sweeping, saying, oh, they're cleaning the park to have it ready for opening day in 3 weeks. I think there's a story there.
Any really kind of photos like that, video like that, is always, painting something, is always, it always, for whatever reason, it was something that the media would always use. If you had a couple of people painting a building, it shows activity. It shows, getting ready. I think those are the kind of things that sells.
Yeah. So if you have your own questions that you want to ask the folks at Tower Topics, don't send them to me. Send them to Don. Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com. Please include your first name, the city and state you're from, as well as your question. And, really not a lot's off limits with us. We answer a lot of questions that are pretty insulting. So Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com is where to send them. We appreciate everybody that has sent in questions and look forward to answering more in the future.
Tower Topics t-shirts comes in a wicked green this year, $22. It includes shipping. If you're interested in one, easy ways to get one. Just send us a message on our X, which is Tower_Topics, or you can just drop me an email at donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com. I'll send you the QR code. And once the transaction goes through, it's just a matter of days before you get your shirt.
Yeah. $22 includes shipping, and that's with the price of eggs being as high as they are. So appreciate seeing them around. Make sure you order them now so you have them in time for coaster stock. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.